Okay. I think we should get started, David. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
We can get right into it. Hi, Ridwan.
Yeah, maybe, put in the comments. Where are you based at this moment? I was thinking in the last webinar, it'd be so nice to see where people are based. And I know that
Right.
people are just coming in. Just let us know in the chat box, where are you based? Where are you? And I've got Indonesia. Lovely to see
Okay.
you. Oh, from the US. Great. Wow. What time is it there in
Oh,
the
I was going to say, what time is it in the US right now? That's
Yeah, is it in the middle of
wow.
the night?
Yeah, it's 1 a.m. now, but I saw Jennifer's post, so I thought I'll attend it today.
Oh, nice. Thank you for
Wow.
joining us. I
Thank
really
you.
hope, I know we're going to make
Thank
it worth
you.
your while. Swathi, we're really going to make it worth your while.
Thank you so much, Jenny.
With
Okay.
India in the house as well.
Yeah, great. Wonderful. Okay. All right. If you're just coming in, please just let us know where you are. Let's get started then. I'm so delighted to be with David to really try and share and have a conversation about ideas in terms of how to use AI in the physics classroom. And David will introduce himself a little bit later. He's so experienced in terms of AI, edtech tools, as well as teaching for many years physics, maths, and all sorts of things. Oh, look, from it, great to hear you, Jennifer. Yes, yes, that's right. Sorry, I'm just checking in on the chat box just to see people's messages. But before we get started, just so you know, we are recording this session, but your faces and also your names will not be in the recording. But at the same time, we would love you to have your cameras on. We will be putting blue boxes over your faces, so you won't be on the recording, but we'd love to see you if you're able to put your camera on. And then if you are on LinkedIn, please share any insights or ideas that you have during this webinar. The hashtag is AI powered pedagogy. And we would love to see your thinking and also carry on the conversation after this. So, David, over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And that's a beautiful picture of Jenny and I.
Yes.
It's been really an honor and a privilege to get to know Jenny, to work alongside her, and to be a beneficiary of her work, really. My name is David. I'm originally from Ghana, but currently living and working in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. I really love it here. The traffic is amazing, and then so is the food. But I've been teaching physics, math, science, and a few other things for a while now, but really where my passion lies is tech and tech integration. And so it's a joy to, be able to support teachers to leverage technology and support our students about as best as we can. And so yeah, that's about me. Jenny, you want to share something about yourself too?
Yeah, thank you, David. I met David in Cambodia, and I actually watched him present. Um, it was a talk for EARCOS actually on AI, and I was so impressed with the ideas that David shared that straight away I think I pretty much contacted David and said, okay, I want to collaborate with this person and share ideas. And I think today, I hope that you have a lot of takeaways. From David's wealth of knowledge and experience. And I'm absolutely delighted to be here as well. So, okay, shall we start with the first question? Because we always like to activate your prior knowledge and understanding. So let's just start with a little poll here. And the wonderful Serena, who is in the background running this show, will put the Menti link here so you can click on your computers or you can pick up the QR code with your phone or mobile device. On a scale of one, not familiar, to five, expert, how familiar are you with integrating AI in your teaching? And this is purely anonymous. We want to keep it anonymous, and it would be just a good kind of good for us to see. Oh, okay.
Okay,
Salt's
that's a
coming
three.
in.
2.5.
Okay. Any other takers?
Okay, so the average is still, all right, we're going down a little bit. Okay,
Okay.
okay,
Great.
okay. I mean, like Jenny said, this is not this is not a summative assessment at all. This is just to, help us guide the conversation and kind of, keep that in mind, how best we can support, your growth and your learning. And so it's good to know wherever we are. And, I find it interesting, Jenny, that a lot of times I think when people are unsure, they go for the middle. And I'd like to read some more research about this, but like it's always interesting to me when we do these kinds of surveys and it lands like dead center, right? Like,
Mm.
this is on a solid 3. And so yeah, that's interesting.
That's really interesting. I wonder if it's because we want to kind of always choose being in the middle rather than extremes, right? So, yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. That gives us an idea of your AI experience in terms of integrating it into technology. Let's take it away with a story.
So as I think about artificial intelligence and I think about, supporting my students and all of that, I'm reminded that if I try to teach my students the way I was taught, the issue is that the world itself continues to change and everything around me continues to grow in different ways. And so while I may not be doing things worse than I was taught, even if I did it exactly the way I was taught by my best teacher, it would still not be good enough. And I'm reminded, of this story of Nokia. It is reported that the CEO of Nokia said that we didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost. And growing up, I'm sure, all those on this call are quite familiar with the Nokia 3310. A number of us owned one of these. At least if you didn't, then you did not live the life. But it was just a joy to have that. And Nokia was such a big tech company, but right now they're not. And it's not necessarily because they did something wrong or they did, something that they were not supposed to do, but it's because they failed to do what they were supposed to do. And I don't want to be a teacher who does not prepare my students for the future that they're going into. And so for me, that's, thinking about artificial intelligence, thinking about technological changes, that's one of the things that continues to drive the work that I do. And I recently read a book by
Mm.
Jason Fiverr, and it talks about the different phases of change. And Jason does a really good job at just talking about how human nature deals with embracing change. And he talks about 4 different phases of this change that happens. And so usually when there's a change, the first response is panic. COVID-19, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a tech change, right? Like whatever, whenever there's something different, and doing this webinar just reminds me of online school and how much panic that brought to a lot of us, right? Like we get in there, we're like, how are we going to do this? And so the initial response is panic, and that's a response for a lot of people, and that's absolutely fine. And so I can understand how people feel, even thinking about AI and the students cheating and all of that. The panic is okay,
Mm.
right? But we need to be able to move past the panic to the stage where we're ready to adapt.
Mm.
And that's the second phase that Jason talks about, the adaptation phase, where at this point, people are willing to make the changes needed to survive. They're willing to make the changes needed so that they don't lose out.
Mm.
But that's okay, but that's not the pinnacle of it, right? That's good progress, but that's not where we want to be comfortable. And so we move to a point where it becomes the new normal. Again,
Mm.
like COVID-19, right? Online school became the new normal. Zoom calls became the new normal, right? But if you think about it, I just told you that story about Nokia. Think about Skype. Initially, video calls used to be synonymous with Skype. People would say, "Oh, I'm going to Skype this person. I want to Skype that person." Where is Skype today?
Yeah.
Right? Because maybe they did not adjust with the new normal.
Mm. Mm,
right? So we move from the point where we're just adapting to the point where we're making significant changes and we're okay, altering our daily activities so that we're embracing that new normal.
mm,
And then the next stage after that is a point where we've made so many changes, we have altered our program so much that we cannot imagine what life would have been without the progress that we have made. And
mm.
that's the stage where we say we would never go back. And so as we go through this webinar and as we go through these conversations, my goal is not to get you through all these 4 stages today. My goal is to get you thinking about your own practice and seeing where you are in, which phase are you in adapting to this change? And are you at the point where you would never go back? Has AI altered your teaching practice so much that you just can't go back to living life
Mm.
without the changes that it has brought to you? And, this really resonated with me because I've also read Jenny's books, and there's a really good idea in Jenny's book that she shares. And Jenny, you want to talk about that as well?
Sure. So I kind of liken these 4 stages to this AI adoption model. It's a cyclical model, and it starts with survival. That survival, which is like the panic phase that Jason talks about in his book. And then the next stage is strive, where we're playing with tools. We're trying to give some professional learning to teachers in terms of AI integration. Then thrive, where we may start really using AI to enhance learning. And then that last stage, arrive, as a total transformation of units of inquiry and how we approach the classroom. And I kind of cite cyclical though. So we kind of may go back, like if we get to a rise stage, it's okay to go back to survive if there's a new tool or there's another, huge wave of news, because you know how we're just bombarded at the moment every day with different AI news and tools. It's just the field is growing exponentially, and so it can be quite overwhelming for teachers. And I think it's really important that we say it's okay to be in panic mode, and to be in survival mode, but you know that the next stage is strive, and then we go to thrive, and we're aiming for arrive, but it's cyclical, and we go back and forth.
Absolutely. And, the joy of this, like Jenny and I have been collaborating for a while now, and every now and then there's a new tool that comes out. And then, like, one of us will message the other and, like, have you tried this? Right. And then, like, sometimes her response is like, oh, no, but I kind of worry about this one. That's panic. Right.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine. So the thing is that, it does not have to be the entire artificial intelligence, right? There's a tool where you're still in the adaptation phase,
Mm,
whereas there are some tools where you're at the point where you don't want to go back anymore
mm,
because this has become like a really big part of your teaching practice that you cannot just imagine life without it anymore. And so we just have to think about this and kind of be flexible in that understanding. Now, to bring it to physics, you see, it's really interesting whenever I'm in a room with other physics teachers, science teachers, math teachers. Some people think that we have a certain intellectual superiority with which we walk around with a chip on our shoulder and all of that. And that's a debate for a different day. But I think that usually when we consider physics and the fact that it's a content heavy subject, and when we think about it and we're thinking about the specific use case
mhm,
of integrating AI in such when people want to say something is difficult, they say, "Oh, it's not. Is it rocket science?" That should tell you how physics, the sciences, math, all of that
mm,
appears to people as this like that. It's a lot of brain working out, right?
mm,
So in a subject that requires a lot of thinking and all of, not to say that other subjects don't,
mm,
but a very content heavy subject like physics, how can we effectively integrate artificial intelligence? And one of the things that I love about Jenny's book, The AI-Powered Pedagogy, is that it emphasizes on the fact that it's always pedagogy before technology.
yes.
So throughout this conversation, the goal is not to just introduce you to a couple of AI tools and then that's fine, but we want to go beyond that.
Hmm.
And so as I think about how to incorporate artificial intelligence into our lessons and into our practice as teachers, I just thought to break it down into 3 domains.
Yes, I love this.
Those 3 domains, let's think about engagement. With the students in the room, what can we do to increase engagement?
Mm,
Let's think about autonomy.
mm,
What can we do to support the learner autonomy when they're outside of the classroom?
mm,
When we don't have them, again, physics teachers, whether it's the IB or the AP or IGCSE, there's just a lot to complete. We're
mm,
always battling with time. So
mm,
what can we do to increase learner autonomy when they're not in the classroom to support their learning journey? And then also insights, right? What kind of insights can we get, using artificial intelligence? And so we're going to move on and start to look at them in detail. But
okay.
please, if at any point in time you have any questions at all, there's something that you're not clear on, please feel free to drop a message in the chat, and
Mm,
Jenny and I will do well to, respond to it as we go. Is that
lovely.
okay?
Yeah, lovely.
All right. So when we think about engagement, I'm thinking about, in classroom support. What can I do? Now, while these tools may not be physics specific, physics is also taught in whatever the language of instruction is.
Mm,
English for me might be a different language for you. But
mhm,
one of the things that we can do is to change the level of complexity
mm,
of the content that we're giving to our students.
mm,
And so using things like rewordify or defect, and all of these we have put on a Padlet that you would have access to, so don't worry about it. But if, a tool like Diffit can change the reading level, the lexile level of a piece of reading to a level that is appropriate for the students in your class. I work with a lot of ESL students, EAL students, and so that is very, very, very helpful. I've been using tools like Notebook LM and Canva. You can change things that are just plain text into different media. And
mm,
so, it can be an audio now, it can be, like an infographic, right? I've done all kinds of things. And for students who are not very academic, the podcast that you get from Notebook LM is a really great introduction, right? And so again, this is not to replace the teacher or all of what you're doing in the classroom, but this is to spark some engagement inside of the classroom.
mm,
Right. And so when you use Notebook LM to create like a podcast, the students listen to it, they have an idea of what is going to be taught in the lesson. So usually I'll do this, I'll generate the audio, and then I'll share with the students ahead of the class. They listen to it, they come to class, and then it kind of gives them an idea, but they don't have all the details, right? So it gives them an idea. It's a great provocation to what we're about to discuss in the class. One tool that I've also come to love is Heuristica. And what this does
mm.
is that it helps students to create a mind map. So we talk about, visible thinking routines. We talk about mind maps and how they're important, right? Harvard has a lot of research on this. But let's look at how Heuristica goes about creating these mind maps. So let's say quantum computing, right? There are different command terms that you can use. So you can ask, what is it? You can ask the pros and cons of it.
Such a powerful tool.
You can get it to, all kinds of things.
Mm,
Yeah, significance, theoretical significance. It won't be a good physics session if we don't bring up Schrodinger's cat. So, and so
mm,
as we watch this, and you can also upload, a piece of text that you want the students to use in creating the mind maps. Now, let me just state a caveat here
mm,
that the goal is not to get students to just use AI to create all the mind maps for them. Absolutely not. But
mm,
we are also mindful that not all of our students have the same abilities.
mm,
And so if we all agree, and the research agrees on the usefulness of visible thinking routines like mind maps, then we can also agree that the creation process should not get in the way of the benefits that it brings. So if a student, due to their diverse learning abilities, is not able to, start to create all of these mind maps because it seems like a lot to them, then you can allow them opportunities to create a mind map using a tool like this, either on a different topic or on the same topic. And then throughout that modeling process, they get to understand how it works and see how they can incorporate this into their own learning.
Lovely. Beautiful.
So in terms of, increasing or augmenting our engagement in the classroom, these are some of the tools that we can use to do that.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Okay.
Next, we will look at, let's see, learner autonomy. So what can we do to ensure that when our students go home, when they're no longer in the classroom, they still have, some support. They still are able to learn. And, Khan Academy is a platform that most of us are familiar with, we've used and loved for a long time. But what is great about these platforms is that because of all of the AI advancements, it's able to tailor the content to the pace of the student. And so it helps students to be able to work, at different paces. It helps them to be able to review content that has already been covered in the class and things like that. Another platform is Flint. Now, Flint is, similar to many other AI platforms. It's a large language model that they have programmed mainly for students and for schools. What it does is that it gives you the opportunity to set up like classrooms, and then you can assign things to students, and then you can see every conversation that the student is having with this chatbot. Now, the advantage here is that, like, one of the ways I've used it in my physics class is at the end of year when we're doing the exams, I gave them, like I would usually give them a checklist on a Google Doc, with which they would use to prepare for the exams, right? But this time the checklist was given to the artificial intelligence chatbot in Flint, and then the students have access to that chatbot. So then the students say, oh, like one of my students just went in and say, what topics do I need to study for these exams? So it just gave them the list that I've given to the chatbot, right? And then the student kind of goes through and say, okay, I've covered this. What else do I need to cover? And because I've also fed it the fact that it's an IB class, these are the things being covered, like the student will ask questions like, under electromagnetism, what are the specific things that I need to learn? What are the things I need to look out for? So it's kind of guidance, but it's not necessarily relying on it for factual information. And that's the difference. Now, let me also mention here that, you see, all of these tools are great, but they're not meant to replace the teacher's effort in the classroom. Now, I'm a firm believer in the fact that with the advancements of AI, what we as human beings need to do is what we are best at doing, which is connecting with one another. And so the human should always be at the center of our AI integration. And so when I get you to start to think about how this will, look like in your classroom, I want you to think about a specific student in your classroom.
Yeah.
So how will David benefit from Flint? David, a student in my class who struggles to keep up with his notes and, the content that has been covered in the class and all of that. How will David benefit from these tools? Right? It's always around a specific, but that's why, when I talked about engagement, I talked about the ESL students in my classroom, right? Because the fact that the tool is cool, if I have students in my class who don't struggle with the language, I don't have to use it just because the tool is cool. And so it's important that, we understand that this is not the idea where we're all in the classroom and everybody is on their computer chatting with the chatbot and asking the chatbot for physics questions. I feel like that's really sad, because that will be just a waste of a brilliant opportunity to connect and to collaborate.
Yes.
And so when it comes to learner autonomy, these are things that we're giving the students tools. And, if you look at the icon that I put down, right, I'm kind of a technical person. Live sound engineering. But the way I think about it is when I'm mixing live sound, right, like everybody has a voice, right?
Mm,
But I'm tuning everybody's voice differently. So
mm,
there's some people that I'm giving a little bit of the lows. There's some people I'm giving a bit of the highs. There's some
mm,
people I'm cutting out some of the mid-range
mm,
frequencies, right? And so that's what we're doing. That I'm looking at Daniel in my class and I'm thinking, oh, Daniel could really benefit from an audio version of this content.
mm, mm,
I'm thinking, oh, Rejoice really needs to watch these videos in Khan Academy.
mm.
So as we think of AI and we think of learner autonomy, let's think about humans, specific people in our classroom, and not just the tools.
I think that's such a good idea for later when we ask everyone to share and collaborate some of their experiences. And thank you, David, for really mentioning that, as teachers, what we do best is to connect and we want to encourage collaboration in the classroom. And so these kind of tools where we want students still to be autonomous and to experience self-paced learning outside the classroom to really support their understanding for inside the classroom when they have this beautiful social constructivist learning environment. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So that last theme, in case I know some people are just coming in, I just wanted to, first of all, before we go to the last concept, so David's just been talking about these really three important key ideas. How do we use these AI tools to promote engagement, to encourage autonomy? And then now here he's going to talk about insight.
Okay. So when I think about insights, I'm thinking about as a teacher, you know, data. And
Mm,
I've recently been on, a journey learning a lot more about data analysis and what I can do with data inside of my classroom. And so I think about insights, right? What insights can I get from the data that I collect from my students? So whether it's the tests that I've given them, their performances in those tests and all of that. So two ways. Now, I think that when my students were preparing for their recent IB exams, one of the things that I did with them was I gave them a lot of past papers,
mm,
right? And so when they go through the past papers, I mark it for them, right? And then I got them to all set up, these their chats with their preferred AI bots. Again, you may notice that I'm not particularly talking about like Chat GPT or Cloud or Poe. It
mm,
does not really matter what tool you're using, right? Like Jenny covers in her book that it's not the tool you're using, it's how you're using the tool.
mm,
And so, if the only toolbox that you have if the only tool that you have in your toolbox is a hammer, then you're going to treat everything as though we're a nail, right? Jenny does a good job talking about this in the book, but this is not a one size fits all kind of thing. And so the tool doesn't matter. Anyway, back to the point.
mhm,
So they're using different tools, but what they do is that after we've gone through the script and I've marked it, I give it to them, they take pictures of it and
mhm,
then they upload it onto the AI.
mhm,
What the AI does is that it analyzes the questions, analyzes which particular questions they're getting wrong,
mm,
and then it shares insights with them. Sometimes it will identify misconceptions that they have. It will identify where they've had like common errors. For one of my students, it was actually a mathematical issue. It wasn't really a physics thing, but
mm,
the AI noticed that it was making a particular, like the student was making a particular mathematical error in a number of questions. And so, that's really valuable insight.
mm,
And so the goal is to empower my students to do this by themselves so that when they go through a question and they've got the mark scheme, they can just upload this and then get insights from the AI. I, as a teacher, also use this to generate insights that help my planning
mm,
and my reflection.
mm,
So, especially in IB schools, we're all about reflecting on this and reflecting on that. But as we get our students to be able to reflect, regardless of the curriculum that you're working in, as a teacher and as lifelong learners, we believe that I always use, and I think this is the perfect time, Jenny, because Newton's first law of motion talks about, an object being at rest and an object that is moving, continuing in that state unless there's an external net force applied on it, right? And so I always say to my students that you're going to keep being exactly where you are if you don't actively do something different. But the difference is that the world around you will be changing so much so that even if you stayed where you are, you'll actually end up being behind.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but the point is that as I reflect on my teaching, I do so with data. So in the next slide, you would see
Yes.
an example of data that I have from my class. So
Mm-hmm.
this is an assessment that I gave the students. This is not the question paper, but this is how I recorded the data here, right? So I've got the question numbers at the top,
Mm-hmm.
and then I've got the total marks in row 3. And then from row 4 to 15, I've got the student names, A, B, C, D. These are actual students in my classroom, A, B, C. But this is also, I put A, B, C, D there because I wanted to remember to mention that we need to be mindful of data protection.
Yes.
Right? This is not where you're sharing your students' full names. And, sometimes people get like sheets for like your learning management system and it has parent emails and no, please. Right. And so you can choose to anonymize this, how you will. You can make this first names or like show, initials of the students just in a way that it can never be traced back to those students and you're not sharing, student personal data with any form of AI. It does not matter whether it does not matter the country that it's coming from. We must always be mindful of what data we're sharing with the AI. And so I record each question as I mark, I mark question 1, they get 1 mark, I put that there, or they get 0, I put that there, and then it creates the sheet for me. Now I'm happy to share, a copy of this sheet because it has some formulas in there. If you will find it helpful, I'm happy to share that with you. But what this gives me is that it tells me what each student got on each question and how well they did. So when I go into the chatbot, Jenny, if you don't mind showing us what the demo looks like.
Yeah, let me just go on. I think this was our mentee. And then here I've got the physics test, your conversation. And let me just go up to the top so that everybody can see what was the actual prompt that you gave for this large language model. Okay.
So as we look at the prompt, one of the ideas that Jenny talks about in her book as well is that, prompt engineering, and again, as physics people, right? Like when we think about engineering, we know that prompt engineering is not engineering, okay?
No.
It's not as didactic as engineering needs to be. It's more fluid. And so the principle I always tell, the people I'm privileged to work with is that treat it as a conversation and not a demand.
Yes. Yes.
It is a conversation. It is not a demand. It's not that I set the 4 magic words and so provide me the magical response, right? It's about getting it to do. So I say, here's a test paper. So I uploaded the test paper, right? Here's a test paper that I gave my physics class, analyze each question and identify the skills that are being assessed. So it goes through it and then it says like question 17A is on tension in a string, 17B. So it knows exactly what each question is testing. It knows the skills, it knows the concepts that are being tested. Right? And so once it identifies this, and the reason I do this and I don't put all of it in one command is because when you treat it as a conversation, once it's done this, I go through this and I'm sure that we're on the same page. It's not hallucinating. It's not saying that question 30 is on electricity when it's actually on a flywheel. Right? So I know that, okay, it's got that. And then I upload a screenshot of the data that I just showed you. So I say, here's the performance data of the students in my class, analyze the data and share insights on student performance and how this can support me in, helping my students. So it gives me, says like the class average was this, average is not really an important data set, but it talks about like performance on each question, right? It compares how they performed on paper one and how they performed on paper two.
Mm,
It talks about, specific areas that the students were very weak in.
mm,
And then, like, as a teacher, I can look at this and think, oh, okay, it feels like the class did not really get rotational dynamics.
mm,
Maybe I'll go back and, reteach this. So I've done this in my class before, and it's led me to realize, okay, some things worked, other things did not, and I've gone back to reteach some things.
mm.
And, it's really proving to be very insightful for my practice as a teacher.
Yeah, I
Right.
love it.
Now,
Should we?
when I asked the question, it gave me responses based on like question 17A is this and 18B is that. And I said to it, don't use question numbers, use the scales instead.
Mm,
Right. And so, you're refining this as long as you know exactly what you're looking for.
yeah.
And so it helped me, identify that, students who performed high, they excelled at complex multi-step problem solving. And they showed strong analysis and in energy and thermodynamics. Like all of that is useful information,
Yes.
right? Could I have done that without AI? Probably a couple of hours, right?
Or
Like sitting down
longer.
and
Yeah.
going through all.
Yeah.
But now this just saves me time which now I can spend connecting with my students, right? Like the goal is to free myself and give myself the time to be able to connect with my students and do what I do best,
Yes, I love it.
supporting my students.
I love it.
And, I can get it to provide individual feedback for me, for each student,
Mm,
on areas where they glowed, areas where they need to grow, right?
mm,
And so this is very specific based on their performance. So
mm,
we'd say like student B, for example, showed strong performance on basic force problems, but they struggled with simple harmonic concepts. Like, and so this can help me when I'm talking to students on where they need to revise,
mm. Okay.
right? Like sometimes after a thing like this, when I've got like a meeting with parents and students, I can always refer to this kind of insights from these data sets to help me.
Yes.
So in summary, we've just looked at how we can support our students in three different domains. That's
Yes.
looking at increasing engagement, looking at increasing autonomy, and then being able to generate more insights from the data that we have and we collect from our students.
Lovely. And I think we've got a few minutes to do this. We still would love you to actually network a little bit, talk to some other physics teachers from around the world. So I think, why don't we have like 5-minute breakout room? If I can just ask Serena to create breakout rooms of maybe groups of 3. And this is what we would like you to discuss. So choose one domain, whether that's engagement, autonomy, or insight. Discuss how AI support in that area could work in your physics class. And then please, if you could invite someone to scribe on the Padlet. So let's get straight into those breakout rooms, 5 minutes, and then we'll come back. Wonderful. I can see people disappearing off into the breakout rooms. So feel free to join the breakout room. You should have an invitation coming up.
So I know that, 45 minutes is a really short time, especially when you factor in the time to connect. And so I don't suppose that I've answered all of your questions or suddenly moved you from, just the point where you're panicking to the point where you wouldn't want to go back. But the goal here was to create a spark in your brain. And so if you're leaving here with thinking, oh, okay, that's something I could try, that's an idea, then I think my work is done.
Mm,
Now, to support you in continuing on that journey, I couldn't recommend this book anymore. It's an amazing resource because it it captures everything that I believe in when it comes to tech integration and AI pedagogy, which is the fact that we must keep the human at the center of it. And so please look out for AI powered pedagogy by Jenny. I don't know if you know who Jenny is, but she's an amazing writer. And this book really, really does a good job in covering like things like the ethics of integrating AI, how we can mitigate plagiarism. And so there's a lot that I did not get to cover, in this session with you, but all of that is touched upon in this book. So please do well to get this book. And I hope that you're leaving here with a spark. Now, feel free to link with Jenny and I on LinkedIn, share your learning, share your reflections.
Yes,
And you
please.
know what? If in the middle of the night you have a question about AI, feel free to send us a message and we'll do our best to respond. Thank
Absolutely.
you very
Absolutely.
much for choosing
Yes.
to spend your Saturday afternoon or Friday midnight with us, depending on where you are.
Exactly. Thank you so much, everyone. I have to say a big thank you to David. Thank you for sharing your insights on and ideas on insights, engagement, and autonomy. I love those three themes, those concepts that you discussed. And you do have some homework. So if you did get the Padlet wall, I'm hoping everyone got the link to the Padlet wall, which Serena has put in the chat box. There's a little bit of homework. What is your commitment after this webinar as a physics teacher? I don't think that there's been any webinars on AI-powered physics. This is probably the first one of its kind. So, commit something to yourself, honor your own learning from today. And also thank you, Serena, who's there in the background running the show. And I hope to see you all soon. Take care, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.